the other part of intention that we don't really talk a lot about, or we don't talk about in the same sentence perhaps, is we do the attentions, but it's what we set our attention to. And you have a one-liner in the book that I just busted out laughing when you said, "Who knew the universe was so concrete?" So what we, so what we set our attention on, the universe, who adores and loves us, is more than happy to give us.
Absolutely.
Most of us set our attention on the things that we worry about, and
Unfortunately.
that's what we get a lot of because the universe is pretty doggone concrete.
Yeah.
They take us at our word for it. So, a little bit on that because I think that that's pretty powerful and important. Enjoy this Wild Soul Gathering production. I'm Dr. Sandra Marie. Pour yourself a really tall glass of spiritual curiosity and join me for the Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious podcast. In the spirit of happy hour, cheers to some new insights, peace, revitalization, and perhaps an aha moment that may change your life. Welcome to this episode of Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. In the studio today, I have Mark Robinson from Endeavor to Evolve. Welcome back to the show, Mark.
Wonderful to be back. I always enjoy our interactions. Amazing things always come up.
Boy, that they do, and I'm expecting a lot to come up in this show because I have a whole variety of questions for you and things to discuss. I know that you've been really busy recently with the launching of your new book, Escaping Madness, A Journey to Awakening. I want to thank you for taking time out of your book tour to join us.
Yes, it's been quite the ride. It's really gotten a positive response. So very happy so far with what's happening.
Awesome. So let's jump into the show. I've got, like I said, a lot of things I'm curious about today. I
Okay.
would I would like to start talking today about spiritual tools and how spiritual tools can be used to navigate life or just to navigate a sticky situation. I know I have my favorites. So for you, what spiritual tools are your go-to tools?
Well, first, my go-to is nature, be it the woods and a hike, the mountains, the beach. Definitely resonate with the water. It's no accident that I live across the street from one of the 10 most beautiful beaches in the world. That's where I need to go barefoot, get my vibration in tune with Mother Nature, and relax. And nothing clears my mind like a big blue sky to gaze into. So that's
Nice.
definitely my go-to. And it's not something that takes an effort or concentration like a more disciplined practice like yoga or various kinds of meditation. This is some place where I could just let go and let it be and let it happen. And it always happens.
You say to people who are, I know that you live on the Gulf, but you live in a little bit of an urban area, even though it be it a beach town, but many people live in more dense areas in these bigger cities, and they feel like nature's not available to them. What would you say to them?
Nature is everywhere. You just need to open up to it and look at it. The minute you walk out your door, you are technically in nature. There's a breeze blowing, a sun shining. Most urban areas have some sort of park system, feed streets, hug a tree. The first tree you come to, just give it a big hug and just let that vibration calm you down. Their roots are deep in the earth and they flow up to the trunk and into the leaves and is a conduit for you to absorb.
Nice. I know for myself, I just look up at that sky. I'm a big cloud gazer, or I like to just embrace that energy coming off the sun. There's research out there that it does affect our hormones. So thank you for sharing that with nature. So what about some other spiritual tools? I had in your book you mentioned that you had worked with Buzz Myers, one of the metaphysical astrologers in the 80s and 90s. Can you talk
Yes,
a little bit about what it was like to work with Buzz and how you use that?
Buzz was amazing. I had a little experience with astrologers before Buzz walked into my life. And it was very mundane, everyday. What's your sign? And the predictions for the that you would read in the newspaper. It was just by accident that I was at a party one night and astrology came up, and somebody said, I just saw this Buzz Myers. He was phenomenal. It would be well worth your investment to go book an appointment. And I always trust my intuition. That felt right. 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in front of Buzz, and he was unlike anything I ever imagined an astrologer to be. His readings spiritually motivated. He saw the person he was working with, his client, as an evolving soul. And the astrology is put in place to create challenges for that soul to evolve. Energies were gifted to that client at different times in their life to facilitate that evolution. So his perspective was one of the first things that really focused me on the spiritual perspective of living life on Earth.
Uh, would you consider astrology a spiritual tool then, or not?
Absolutely. As, we are going through this major transition on the planet right now that is going to facilitate the largest leap, evolutionary leap humanity has ever taken. Astrology offers the blueprint for it. Yes, it's up to the human race to see it through, but the foundation for it is in the stars. The energy for it that we're being gifted with is in the stars. The outcomes are in the stars. So if you are experiencing the chaos and being challenged mentally by all these new energies we are working with, astrology would be an excellent resource to find out why this is happening, when it started, when it's going to peak, and when the energies are going to change into something new. So, with giving that information, it makes the actual experience much more palatable because it gives it purpose. It's just not random. It may appear random, but it's not.
Okay, well that's good to know, and it's good to know that that's something that's out there that people could leverage. So I want to switch it up a little bit, and I would like to touch on water. Water seems to be a big topic, especially in the spiritual community these days. It is also in the third dimension with, concerns about water on the planet, but I'm going to go down the spiritual path with water. There's a lady out there, Veda Austin, and she's a water researcher, and she's been spending the last 10 years of her life observing and photographing water with different experiments she's doing. She's really following up on Dr. Emoto's work earlier, who was also a water researcher and took photos of frozen water with words. She describes water as fluid intelligence. And for people who are interested, I'll make sure that I include her information in the show notes if they want to look up her work. Mark, we had talked on a previous show, and you put on your science hat, and you were explaining to me where the different elements of the earth had come from, that they weren't all native to the planet. And you mentioned some things that I had no idea about that really surprised me. Can you share some of that with the listeners?
Well, I do remember stating that water isn't native to planet Earth.
What do you mean it's not native to planet Earth?
It came in on a cloud. A meteorite brought it. Chemical reaction with the elements that were present occurred, but it wasn't naturally occurring in the beginning. It's a little out of my ken. I wish I can give more information on that. But it is my understanding that it's not native to Earth.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because that was the first time that I had heard that. And I'll be honest with you, it really surprised me. But since you brought that up on that episode, I am hearing this from other avenues that water is not native to the earth and it's not even native to our solar system, that it was brought down here. So there's a lot of different talk about sort of the power of water and what it does.
I think it's interesting with our science community doing space exploration and figuring out the components of different planets and solar systems in the universe that they're always looking for water. If they find water, then they hypothesize that it can support life. Because water, it turns out, is the one necessary component to all living things. And the woman that you're talking about, I heard some of her um, science. She's contributing water to intelligence. Now, water holds the wisdom of the universe, and it's that intelligence that is the blueprint for creating life. And I wouldn't argue that. The other thing at the end of her video that I watched, she went out on a limb and said, I've been getting to think that water is the God particle that science has been looking for, the one thing that is present in everything. And when she said that, I got goosebumps and I thought, I bet you're spot on with that. And I don't think it's going to be long before that's proven. Science is moving at an accelerated rate, and everything that we've dreamed about is being proven by science, and it's being proven quickly.
Well, Veda has truly opened the door for more people to do research, and they're really starting to look at the relationship of water to our existence in deeper ways. And I have had more than one person talk about feeling that water is consciousness and that it is at the root of everything. Pam Gregory, a prominent astrologer out of the UK, recently shared that she has just started a journey down a rabbit hole to see water's relationship to astrology. So I'll be really interested to see where she goes with that. So we do know that, a lot of people write messages on water. They'll
Yeah,
write love or peace on their water pitcher to drink it to affect them, and that there's power with it. People can write words on their body, which is
yeah,
mostly water. It's like taking something that we knew in a piece of information that seemed very rudimentary is now taking on a much bigger concept.
yes,
And the thought that water was brought to the planet by other beings, by galactic beings, extraterrestrial beings, is sort of also connects us out of that small belief of this microcosm of the earth is everything. I know in your book you have a chapter, a Starman, that talks about the galactic. Can you share a little bit about that?
well, actually, that's a great segue into that idea. My whole life, I've been highly attracted to water. I was lucky enough to have a city pool at the end of my street. I was in there before I was of age to be legally in there because I was tall and I looked older. I quickly learned how to swim. I was on the swim team. You couldn't get me out of the water. Even if I went to the pool with no intentions of going in, I ended in there anyways, fully dressed. The other amazing moment in my childhood is when I was on one of my little bike explorations, and I discovered that my house was just like 2 miles from the beach on Lake Erie. And I remember the first time I laid eyes on it, it was just a stunning aberration to see that much water in front of me. And for the rest of my times in Cleveland, I was at that beach almost daily. Winter, thunderstorms, hot summer days, I just could never get enough of water. And I did move to the desert for 8 years and discovered that that was not a good fit. And that's why I live in Florida now, because I know that I need to be close to water on a daily basis. So the reason why that's significant to the whole Starman idea is I identify as a Palladian intergalactic, and there's a story behind that. The Palladians are mostly water worlds. And when a Palladian comes to incarnate onto the Earth plane, one of the signifiers that they're Palladian is they're highly attracted to water and they need to be by it. So that was one of the affirming things for me that helped me identify myself as a starman and specifically as a Palladian.
So, did you want to share a little bit about that story, or is that a story for another time?
No, I mean it's the one thing in the book that I really was hesitant to put in. I thought that it was going to lead me up to being judged and ridiculed. I'm some sort of crazy that I think I'm a being from another planet. But I went out on a limb and I figured, this is one of the most significant parts of my story. It needs to be told. And I think it's interesting that 20 years ago, I'm older. I do have my roots in a much different period where people who believed in UFOs were marginalized and thought to be crazy. But I'm impressed at my book tours and talking with people who've read my book that they're really open to it and they really resonate with it. And they thank me for blessing them with the information because now it helps them explain their life path. When I first moved to Florida, I friended somebody and we were working in a healing clinic. And I had just finished with my client and I walked them out to the lobby. And there was another woman at the desk paying for her appointment. And she looked at me and she went, your Archangel Michael. And one of my coworkers who was behind the desk instantly looked up and went, no, he's a starman. And the lady at the desk settled her bill and huffed off. And I turned to my friend and I went, well, what's a starman? I mean, I had no idea. I had no experience with it before. The next day, she brought me a little book about intergalactic energies and beings who have incarnated on Earth. And there's lots of them, from Cyrus, so you're Syrian. I hate it when my mind goes blank. Octurians, souls from Andromeda. There are, and I was reading them, and it was interesting. And I thought, well, yeah, this is a possibility. Yeah, I think I know somebody like that. And then when I hit Palladians, my jaw just dropped. I was stunned. The book described me and my experience on the planet so far to a T. And for the first time in my long life, because I was pushing 50 then, I understood everything. I understood who I was. I understood why I was on the planet, how I got here, why I incarnated into the family that I did, how I knew what I knew at such an early age without being exposed or taught to it, what my likes and dislikes were, and even my appearance. Palladians tend to be tall, thin people, and that's definitely me. But definitely the attraction to water. I mean, it was undeniable. And once I opened up to that, it just brought peace to me, and it enabled me to utilize that information in my healing and when I wrote the book. And I bring up healing because Jesus Christ was a Palladian. He was an intergalactic to a higher evolved soul that chose to incarnate on Earth to facilitate the evolution of the human race. And he was modeling all the behaviors of a higher evolved being. And in my life, in this current life, I have been equated with Jesus for multiple reasons on multiple occasions. When my hair was dark blonde and long and I had a goatee, I mean, everybody I met said, oh my God, you look just like the Western version of Jesus Christ. So I've always really, even though I'm not religious, I've always really identified with the energy of Jesus and what he believed and what he was able to do. The miracles that are recorded are just higher evolved science. We're all vibrational frequencies, and the Palladians, being more evolved and more intelligent, know how to work with those vibrations to manifest things transmuting from one thing to another and spontaneous healing. And the other thing that Palladians are really invested in Earth because, from what I understand, they came here in earlier times, like, before Egyptian times, bred with the human race, and we share some of their DNA. So they definitely have a vested interest in what's happening now.
I feel like we already interact with the Galactics. And I would say I've talked to a lot of different guests on the show, and that the pretty much all of us have some kind of galactic heritage
Yeah,
within us. So I want to thank you for being really vulnerable and sharing that experience, especially that experience about how you felt initially when you were debating whether or not to make yourself public with Starman. But what I'll say, it's really interesting, and I do remember, back in the '60s and '70s, the whole being abducted and the testings, and the media, how it was played out in the media. Now, what was really happening or not, it's hard to know. I did live in New Mexico a number of years, and there's the people who are from New Mexico and the natives have a lot to say about that. But there is a television series out called The Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch, which actually happens to be in New Mexico. And it's in the fifth season, and it is one of the most popular TV shows out there. People are all talking about it, and they can't wait for the next episode to come. It is like it's a real life show about the Skinwalker Ranch where they watch galactic activity that is happening every day, and it's undeniable. So it's already happening. People are watching it, they're recording it. The masses are just enthralled with this show. They can't get enough of it.
I
It's
think
it's
it's
really interesting. So that you're saying this, I'm going to tell you that it's a lot more mainstream than I think that you might think.
I think the reaction to that show, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with it, but I think the reaction's a testament to how the human race is evolving and raising their vibration, that they are able at this point to embrace the idea of interacting with intergalactics and tune into the show to find out when, why, and how.
Yeah, and they're really excited, and they want more. They want to know more. It's not like they're going there with all these their arms up as if there's an enemy out there. It's a
Uh,
pure curiosity of let's get to know what's happening and how this is all working. I think we're getting there. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I do watch a lot of Gaia. And I was watching an interview with the lady Debbie Solaris on Gaia, and it was called Understanding Your Starseed Nature. And it was sort of similar to what you were talking about. So she really focused on different diets and GI ailments as specific to the different galactic races. Like, so a Palladian might like these type of foods or have these type of GI problems versus someone from Orion. And she went through all of these things, and it was fascinating to me, especially coming from healthcare, because the way these symptoms were grouped and the foods they liked were very similar to a lot of people that I know and their particular ailments that no one can figure out what the medical reason for it is. And the other thing is she gives you some background as to why that's happening. So, and I'm just going to throw this out there because I don't remember which galactic race it was. There's one out there that never experienced food. So, like when they come to Earth, like they want to eat everything and they make themselves sick doing it. That's sort of a very, again, rudimentary example. But it's interesting because it truly was a total fit with different things. I do want to touch just real quick. You talked about Jesus, the Christ, being Palladian, and that type of heritage. Jesus, Yeshua, the Christ energy. It's still very real.
I would like to pause here because I have something significant to add about the before you ask this question.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just going to go
No,
on.
yeah.
I think it's interesting that in the '60s we were all in fear of aliens, that they were going to come attack us and take over the planet or take us away and enslave us. But that's the old power structure, and the old power structure purpose was to instill fear in the masses so they could control them. And now that the old power structure is quickly disintegrating in front of us, that fear is suddenly falling away. And without the fear, everything can change. Everything's new and exciting. And and we're eager to venture forth into it. So, when I talk about escaping madness or leverage spirituality against chaos, that's exactly what we're doing. We're taking the spiritual components and aspects and leveraging it against the old paradigm, that old patriarchal, fearful thinking, to create something new, the new earth that we're moving into.
Wow, that's great. In a collaborative way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's the whole
Wow.
day and age, people coming together and creating something new.
Gosh, that's mind-blowing. Thank you. So you had mentioned Jesus, the Christ being Palladian, and that or coming from a Palladian type of heritage. And I know that I believe that you write about it also a little bit in the book. You give a couple of examples, and one of the things that you shared was I think you went to someone for some healing, and at
Uh,
one point he hands you a piece of paper and he says, I need you to read this. And it said, I met Jesus yesterday, or I met the Christ yesterday, one or the other. I don't remember the specifics. And you had an emotional reaction as you're having now. And you've had a number of these experiences. So one of the things that I would say is in a third dimensional, in a third dimensional lens, there would be a lot of people would have difficulty reading those words, maybe terming you
yeah.
delusional or terming you arrogant. But I want to share a story with you that I'm not really sure. I'll be curious if you remember this story or not.
Okay.
And this was before I lived in Treasure Island, and I was headed down to Florida for business, or I was down there for some reason. And you and I went out one night to the Tiki Bar to catch up on life, and we were having some drinks, and I think we were out on the dance floor, if I recall right. I'm not exactly sure of this, but this man walked up, and he started talking, and I started talking with him, and he was talking about being in the military and sort of having some issues, but he kept focusing on you. And coming from a healthcare background, a mental health background, of course, I wanted to step in thinking that I could help this man. So he looks away from me and he looks at you and he said, You look like Jesus. Are you Jesus? And he looked at me and he said, Can I spend some time with him? So, of course, I was dancing with myself on the dance floor. And you guys had probably a good 20, 30-minute conversation. I can distinctly remember you standing there very erect and listening with him. And basically, he had been a sniper in the military who had killed a lot of people. And he was struggling with that. And it felt like he was looking for absolution from you, seeing you as the Christed energy with it. So if I had not experienced that event and I had not witnessed that event, and I had not witnessed what appeared to be a moment of healing with this fellow who then literally suddenly just disappeared, um, it, it it allowed me to read those words in a very different light and have a different experience. Do you remember that night at all?
Yeah, I do. It was very powerful. I think I of service to that individual and helped him.
Yeah.
So I just want to clarify, even though that healer in Arizona was insinuating that I was Jesus incarnate. And yes, it was no surprise that he came out with that piece of paper and showed it to me, because it's something that I've always felt ever since I was a child, about being compassionate and loving unconditionally and not judgmental. And I've always dreamt of being a healer. I wanted to be just like Jesus and be able to lay my hands on somebody and heal them and make their life experience better. That was just all innate in me when I came into the world. And I contribute that to being of Palladian energy. But I want to clarify that I don't see myself as Jesus incarnate. I see myself as the Jesus of the Jesus energy, that I vibrate with that higher vibrational of love, that is able to be in non-judgment, to be able to be in a place of service, to have the desire to heal in whatever capacity and make somebody else's experience bigger or better. I think there's many people on the earth that are of the Jesus Christ energy. And I'm just one of a whole legion of people that have chosen to incarnate in this particular time on earth to help facilitate this transition that we're going through. But getting back to your story, you told me that has happened to me my whole life,
I know.
and it just,
Well,
when
it's
it happens, you
interesting.
just do what you need to do in the moment to.
I know I went and danced with myself and let you go save the world. It was all good. But a big part of this transition is it's the Christed consciousness returning to
Yeah.
Earth. That is the shift that we're seeing. I guess I'm not a fan of hearing Jesus and religion because the one has nothing to do with the other. To me, just as I said, the Christed consciousness, it's an energy that's out there, and I think that you described that really well. I guess one little last thing as we're talking about galactics, because I don't get to talk about the galactic energy a whole lot with people, although I'm pretty obsessed with it. We recently had the big solar eclipse that crossed in the US in April of 24 this year. It was pretty powerful. And there was a solar eclipse back in August of 2017. And there's an intersection point of those two eclipses, which covers a significant part of Texas. And the belief is that that intersection of those two eclipses has created and opened a portal of some kind. Now, I intuitively feel that that did happen. What that portal is, I can't really speak to, but many feel like it could be a galactic portal, um, because I would say there is a very overall belief that the galactics will be more actively interacting with us probably this year or next year. And again, when you talk about this, the secrets of this Skinwalker Ranch, I mean, people love it. They're excited about it. It interests them. It's like you said, it's not the scary thing anymore. So I did want to throw that out there.
Yeah, it's all falling into place perfectly. It's all written in the stars, hence the astrology. I look at it as a blueprint, and much like when you build a building from a blueprint, as you're actually doing the construction, things get modified and changed along the way, but it still follows the basic idea or concept that you started out with in the blueprint.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You talk about the astrology and the role, I believe you call it a planetary tool in your book, has played in your life. So June 21st, 2024, which is literally right around the corner for us, there is a full moon in Capricorn, which brings with it the opportunity to release victimhood mentalities.
Uh,
The, the word victimhood brings up lots of emotions for many: difficult childhoods, relationships that have gone awry. With the current planetary shift that we're literally in the middle of and we're experiencing, this astrological opportunity seems perfectly aligned to move us along our path to spiritual enlightenment. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Yes, it's important process moving through this transition we're going through. We need to finally identify with the old energies, heal them, and have resolution. You can't create something new if you're still being, I can't think of the word, held back or influenced by something that happened in the past. So I think that astrological energy is there to facilitate people getting to the root of their issues and finally having the tools to deal with them. And as we receive all this energy that the planet is being privy to, it is raising our vibrations on an individual level. And each time our vibration raises, it enables us to do more and more things. Something that we approached back in the 60s or 70s we didn't have the tools to deal with, so we, drank ourselves silly and did drugs. Well, now we have different, we're vibrating differently. We have different tools. Those issues never went away, but the universe always challenges you sooner or later to address them. And a lot of stuff is coming up for a lot of people. And I think this is the point in time where they're going to heal it and let it go so they can finally move forward.
So this is an opportunity to release that baggage, because otherwise you're living in the past. You're never going to live in the present because you're always living in those moments. So this has come up in conversation with some other people I've had recently, is healing and the work of healing. So that we have to work to heal just doesn't feel right anymore. Like, healing should be easy and instantaneous. So I'm thinking, with the energy of this full moon, knowing what it is, we can just do a little ceremony, put that energy out there, and we're done with it. Poof, we're done with it. Do you think that that's possible to do that?
Yes, I do. I highly recommend it. If it's failed in the past, give it another shot, because this time around, I think it's going to be different, because everything energetically is different on the planet.
Nice. So, that being said, there really is a mental health crisis around the world, and it is escalating. We have so much fear, there's wars, there's natural disasters, are all adding to the fuel of accelerating this crisis. There is overwhelming anxiety, I think, at levels that we've never really experienced before. And it seems to be troubling a lot of people. Your thoughts on how to leverage one's spirituality to navigate that chaos and disruption and move past it?
Well, first, I want to throw out that I think that the increase in anxiety and issues with mental health are brought on by stress. And I want to point out that change, just by its very nature, is stressful. Think of any time in your life that you've moved from one event or one relationship, or childhood to adulthood to motherhood to nursing director to healer. It's never easy. It never happens overnight. And the transition point is stressful. Well, we are going through the biggest transition that the human race has ever experienced. Everything that we're witnessing in the world that seems like we're going backwards instead of forwards is just the old paradigm raising its last attempt to hold on to its power before it crashes and burns. Well, it hasn't quite crashed and burned yet. So we're in that place of transition where the stress levels for most people are going through the roof. I'm pretty grounded and centered, doing my sunsets at the beach. And I have a good concept of what's happening thanks to astrology. Thanks to astrology, I think I have a good vision on the world that we're going to begin to create, or that we just started to create, because it's already in the works. But still, on a personal level, my life has been pretty stressful lately. I mean, it's bringing up old issues. It's forcing me to look at things in a different way and finally find that resolution for it. So, since you brought up the idea of the full moon, I think I'll be out in the backyard at the fire pit burning some shit.
I think that that's a good idea. I actually have a little ceremony with my fire pit up here on the farm that I was planning also. I just believe it's a great opportunity, and, let's get the word out there.
So, to answer the question, though, like I think you were looking for, when you're experiencing that stress and you're off center and you're confused, and it does seem like at times we're going insane, that's when having a good spiritual toolbox comes in handy. There are so many tools out there, like you expressed at the beginning of the interview, that are available. The more tools you have, the easier it's going to be to navigate through this chaos and madness that we're all going through. So it's worth the effort to get yourself out in nature, to get down on the floor and do some yoga or breath work, to be standing at your job and just consciously relax your mind and your muscles and give your body a minute or two to let go, to purge, and to recalibrate. There are so many things out there. I offer many ideas in the book that can be utilized. They're not going to be effective if you don't use them. So find out what they are, find out what's a good fit for you, and put it into practice. One of my teachers that gifted me along the way said something really profound that I think about almost every day. You know, we're all looking for that spiritual epiphany, that we're gonna have that aha moment. Everything is going to change, and we're going to manifest ourselves in a high vibrational spiritual way. Well, in theory, that sounds really great, but in reality, it's much different. It is something you need to practice every day.
Some
And
assembly required
yes,
with a little commitment.
and you get an opportunity the minute you roll out of bed to practice it. The
I,
minute you walk out your door, the minute you get behind the wheel of a car, that's a big one for me. You know, the minute you start working or interacting on the workplace, it's your opportunity to practice achieving the goals that you have set for yourself.
I start before I get out of bed. I do some work and have some
Oh,
conversation with myself. So I do think that that's important.
yeah.
And, grounding, watching what you expose yourself to. You know how I feel about watching TV and exposing yourself to the negative. Definitely can set your mindset, but something as simple as taking a deep breath and breathing into your sacred heart. Like for me, man, I can just bring
Um,
myself down 3 notches, literally, in that 5 seconds of doing that.
the minute I take a deep
Enlightenment.
breath, when I correct my posture and lift up my rib cage and really feel those lungs, it just changes everything for me.
Yep.
And that
And
only takes 30 seconds to do.
yep. And I focus on the heart. It's a big shift.
That's why it's so exciting to be alive right moment, because the possibilities for the future are endless, and most of them are unknowns at this point. I mean, imagine all the technological advances that we've experienced in our lives thus far. I mean, some of them have been really mind blowing when you think about how we grew up and in our daily activities compared to what they are now. You know, and with these new energies and the new science that's coming in, that's going to accelerate to the nth degree to places that we can't even conceive right now. And I believe you and I have another 40, 50 years left to experience this happening. You know, the other thing that I think is really mind blowing to me personally is the timing of my birth and my maturation process, and that I seem to be ready for the beginning of this transition that happened with the harmonic convergence in 1987, to hold the love and light to get to the transition into the Aquarian age, and now getting through the transition into the new earth that we're creating. I mean, this was so intentional by my soul to incarnate, be here, and be a player in all this. And just think when I look at the arc of it, I'm just amazed at how it's all played out. And we're only halfway through, so that the arc isn't a complete rainbow yet. In another 40 years, I'm going to see the whole picture, and I can't wait. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, me too. It's happening, and honestly, it'll be here before we know it, especially as how things are accelerating these days. I think definitely that is the positive with AI. Our things are going to be exponentially fast in growth and in discoveries, those kinds of things. So let's flip it up a little bit again. We talk about the veil being out there. So we're on Earth, and then we have heavens. We've talked about Heaven's Cross in a previous program, and we talked about the veil and the thinning of the veil. So I would say there's probably a few people out there who are like, I don't really understand this veil thing. Can you explain the veil?
Okay, I think they use the term veil because it's something, it's a physical barrier, but it's something that you can see through and that it's easy to pass things through. When I hear the word veil, I always think of a bride walking down the aisle with that white gossamer covering her face. You can see the face fine, it's back there, but you don't see it clearly. You can't see all the particulars of it. And I think they use the word veil because it has that property. It's not something physical that's around the planet that we pass through and prevents us from accessing the other side once we're here. It is a good metaphor as to um, letting go of some of our knowledge when we choose to incarnate into a physical body so we can achieve the goals that we set out in this lifetime through the challenges that are presented to us. If we came in here with all that wisdom of the universe that is accessible to anybody who's not in a physical body, then it would be much more difficult to do the work you needed to do once you were in the planet. So when they say the veil's getting thinner, I believe it is getting easier to communicate with that other aspect of ourselves that is vibrating much more higher than we are capable so far in the physical body. If that needs clarification, let me continue. I do believe that we're all of one energy, we're all one. Um, I believe we're all fractals of that energy. I believe that fractal has fractals that individualize into the unique souls that have incarnated in the physical body. So, being that we're all of that same energy and we're just different aspects of it, at the moment we're lower vibrational, and there's an aspect to ourselves that's higher vibrational. I like to think of that as our innate intelligence in our physical experiences. There's some things that you just know. There are some things that are just automatic that are taken care of for you. I think that our vibrations are, since they're increasing, we're able to connect with that higher vibration on the other side of the proverbial veil and communicate more freely with it. I think you've had experiences where you've gone inward instead of outward, and were blessed with some major understandings. That's just the
Yeah.
veil getting thinner. That information has always been there. We have chosen to block ourselves from it so we could, accomplish our goals. But now that the goals are being accomplished, with what you brought up about the full moon in June, we're healing all that old energy that we came down to heal. And once that is healed, it is a non-issue. So the purpose for that veil is becoming less and less significant. And that's how I see what the veil is and how its function is and how we can operate with it and why it appears to be growing thinner.
Okay, that makes sense. It's helpful. So it's sort of like our self is on one side and our higher self is on the other side, and we do all this spiritual work to bring
You know,
to
in
to
the
bring
book,
ourselves merge all of those different bodies.
in the book, it ended up being such a long-winded explanation, much like the one I just gifted you with. So it, I tried making a Venn diagram of it. And it took me a couple of days to figure it all out because I had all these notes and, I had to put A here and C there. And then, but once I created this Venn diagram, I thought, this is it. So it's included in the book. So if you need a visual for that, it's in the last chapter of the book.
So that's the math teacher in you? Is that what you're
That's,
trying to tell me?
yeah.
So actually that was why I asked the question, because I did read your description of the veil and how you talked about it, and it may be a couple pages, I believe, but it was so succinct and it flowed so nicely and it made sense to me. I thought I've never, I mean, I had known the information that you gave me, but I don't know that I could have shared that with someone else. Like I understand it, but I thought, gosh, it was spoken so well in the book. Thus,
Oh, my
thus,
thank you.
thus the question. So let's talk about the book. Your last chapter, Transformation, Transition, and Transmutation, is packed with so much information and such wisdom and insight. Honestly, it's almost a show within itself, to be honest with you. Um, I'm trying to think. I have a couple questions here, which one to go with. I know a lot of times I ask three questions at once, and that's not real helpful to the guest. So I will start with actually. So I have two questions for you, and it's almost like the alpha and the omega. So I guess I should start with the first one. How did this book come about? Like, whatever possessed you to sit down and write this book?
It was always in the back of my mind my whole life that I wanted to write a book about my life. Earlier in my life, if I would have wrote it, it would have been much different because it would have been focused on things I was focused in my 20s and 30s. It's interesting, again, going back to astrology, if you look at my astrologer, I have all the energies to be an excellent communicator, an excellent writer. I have Gemini at my midheaven, which rules profession. I have Mercury in Leo in my 12th house, which is the most powerful position for a creative individual. So the energy was always there. The idea of actually doing it was always there. I was surprised that I hadn't done it up to this point, and getting to that point. Well, if not now, when? But the if you let it, the universe guides you to where you need to be and what you need to be doing. Something happened in my life that brought it to a standstill, and my first reaction was panic. And then that night, when I got on the floor to do my nightly yoga, I connected with my intuitive self, and suddenly it was like, Mark, this is the perfect time to write your book. And suddenly my mind was going a mile a minute of things that I wanted to communicate to the world. But unfortunately, humans have a great ability to talk themselves out of their intuitive hits. By the time I went to bed, I was like, well, no, you know, I, I have to address this panic situation and do it in an earthly way. But the next morning, a miracle happened. You lie, you lie in bed apparently, have profound moments. I'm bleary eyed for the first 5 minutes. I stumbled to the bathroom with phone in hand and I turned on the phone. And for the first time, a little drop down window appeared off the toolbar on the top. I never knew it was there. And all I could see in my blurriness was three words. And the only word I could make out was writer. And after I registered that it said writer, it disappeared. And the chat box disappeared. I don't know where it came from. I don't know where it went. But that morning it was there and it said writer. And I just went, okay, I hear you. And that afternoon I sat down at the computer and I just started writing. And it just flowed out of me. It was, I had no set outline. I had some broad ideas for chapter titles and things to organize how I wanted to talk about things. But one chapter built on the preceding chapter, and the book just kind of took on a life of its own to the point where one time I finished a chapter and I was so proud of what I did. And I sat back and I thought, oh my God, well, what am I going to write next? I had no idea where to go from there. And then 10 minutes later, after staring at a blank computer screen, it just hit me. And for the next 3 hours, I couldn't type fast enough. So I almost feel like I channeled the book. And I think I was guided to write it at this particular time because it's very timely to help facilitate all these new awakening souls that are on the planet to help understand what their experience is, to know that they're not going crazy and that they're not alone. This is happening to most everybody, and this is how it can look like. I offer a lot of different examples of how spirituality plays out in one's life. They'll
So,
identify us with something that's in the book. And then towards the end of the book, it brought us to explaining why all this has happened, why it's happening, how it's happening, and what are the possibilities for the future. That's why the last chapter is just so powerful, because it's like a crystallization of everything that has happened prior. And it gives it such purpose and meaning. Then, now that you've been gifted with these tools, how to use those tools to build something new for yourself and evolve to all new higher levels.
well, I would agree. You definitely put yourself out there because it's a memoir of your life. But that last chapter really, as you said, it's pretty powerful. I would totally agree with that and how it ties things together. It almost felt like it was a whole book on its own. So that being said, Mark, what are your projections for the new Earth?
My gosh, just the utopia that I've been fantasizing about ever since I was 5 years old. A place where nobody's judged, a place where there's unconditional love, a place where humanity watches out for itself, takes care of each other, a place where all the energy is used to create peace and beauty and harmony, and a life where everybody is housed and fed and has the opportunity to express themselves in creative ways that their souls resonate with. I believe once we're all awakened, we'll all see the value of being participants. I think everybody is, there's going to be such equality on the planet that everybody's function is going to be recognized as integral and important to the experience of the whole. I think that as it's valued as important, that it's going to be compensated in such a way. And I think the playing field is going to be so level. I don't see the new earth as enslaving a population like the old paradigm has. I see the new earth as, what's the opposite of enslaving?
Freedom.
Freedom. Yeah.
To me, if I had to define the new world in one word, it would be freedom.
Oh my, I love that, freedom. I need to
Yeah.
put that in the book. Freedom. That, yeah, that's, and without the daily stress, because all your food, shelter, clothing will all be taken care of. So we won't have that stress monthly about how to keep that going. And that's going to free us up to pursue what,
So
whatever
it's,
we are here to perform.
I'm going to throw this out there. So when we talk about it, I truly believe that freedom, it's all about freedom. And we talk about the energy and the intention and the emotion, right? So thoughts are electrical and emotions are magnetic. So we have this issue with migration throughout the planet. So, there's a lot of talk about immigration in Europe and the minor Asia countries and the US. Like it's the big discussion. But what's really interesting when we talk about the manifestation of the new earth and freedom are these are people who are determined. They are determined to leave an old life of being enslaved and provide a better life for their children where they can be free, where there can be equality, where they can be free and they can be equality to the point where they're putting their lives on the line for this. That's a lot of emotion attached to a pretty significant concept, which is really bringing a manifestation to realization. I think that sometimes we don't see the power in these activities that are going on in the background that we consider that we look at in a third dimensional way. But if you look at the thought and the emotion and what these folks are going through and their intention for themselves and their children, it's a pretty powerful magnetic shift that's shifting the world in ways that we don't think about.
Well, I'm going to respond, and I think it'll be a surprising way to you. But let's go full circle. At the beginning of this interview, we were talking about galactics being participants in everyday earthly experience and gifting us with their knowledge, wisdom, and technology. If we start working with people from other planets, it's going to change the perspective on Earth in a big way. Instead of nationalism, we're how many countries on the planet? 206. Those borders are just going to disintegrate because we're not going to see ourselves as from countries. We're going to see ourselves from planet Earth. So I think the human race is going global. And I think as that happens, and the threat of violence and control and monopolies disappear with the new wisdom that we're going to be gifted with, um, I don't think people are going to be in a place where they need to immigrate anymore. Things are going to be so wonderful right where they're at that they're going to be happy to experience that. Now, if they wanted to see other geographic areas of the world, I mean, I highly recommend that. I've traveled the world as you have, and the world is an amazing place. There's a lot to be seen there. But I think what you refer to with the politics and the economies, that people are in such a place where they put their lives at jeopardy to find a different place that they could have a better life. I think the need for that is going to evaporate as we become a global society in intergalactic universe.
Well, I would agree. I think I was coming at it from a whole different perspective of that's they are using their imagination to imagine this better life. They are putting out intentions and setting intentions for this better life. They're attaching emotions for this better life. So those are all things that we talk about in universal laws and universal laws of manifestation that at this stage of the game is part of what's drawing in this new world, I believe. And
Yeah.
then we move into the beautiful world that you described, which we will be seeing sooner than later, I do believe. So I'm going to throw a couple of things out there and you can give me some quick insights on it. So, you just talked about your projections for the new earth. We've talked about spiritual tools, leveraging your spirituality. Talk about the infinity wave.
The infinity wave. Evolution never ends. You know, I may have wrote this book that'll be a service to millions of people, but I'm still evolving. I'm still learning. I'm still a thirsty sponge trying to soak it up. And I'm constantly being exposed and stimulated by new concepts and ideas. And this infinity wave I discovered for me was pretty powerful. So I was listening to somebody who was talking about the infinity sign, and that suddenly it seems to be prevalent in all parts of society, not only in math and on the walls of temples in Egypt, but it's showing up in our advertising. It's showing up in corporate logos. I mean, it's just everywhere. And I think, nothing happens by accident. I think that's kind of divinely guided. What is the infinity symbol? Or what does it mean? It means there's no beginning, there's no end. Well, that's kind of the definition of the energy of the universe. The oneness of the universe, that we're all a part of. So I think, as we're evolving and we're embracing this idea of oneness with the universe, that's why the infinity symbol is becoming prominent. Now, what this woman,
Hope Fitzgerald.
Hope Fitzgerald, what she created was a system to utilize that she called the infinity stream. And I believe it came up in a conversation that was centered around water. So she uses a flow of water flowing through an infinity symbol. And she said that it was very powerful and that water holds all the wisdom of the universe and all the unconditional love. She was in a situation, I believe it was clinical, where there was a woman who was really losing it and out of control. And she was sitting there, not being a part of what was going on, just as an observer. And she started doing the infinity stream on her, where she had one end of it going through her heart and the other end of it going through the heart of the person who was having an issue. And she was shocked to witness that within a minute or two, the woman calmed down and became very peaceful. So that caught my attention. So I started playing with the concept of the infinity stream in my own life. I tend to be very playful about these things. Well, gee, that sounds good. How's that going to work for me? Well, I have some pretty wonderful results with it. I use it for my lungs to open them up. I use it on my heart during a meditation to keep me focused on my heart space instead of in my mind. I use it when I go to the beach. I sit on the bench and look out at the water, and I have this infinity stream going from my body to the water with the intention of, if water holds all the wisdom of the universe, to bless me with all the knowledge I need to have. And I'm having some pretty good results with it, so I highly recommend it.
That is very cool. So, the role of water in our evolution.
I think it's going to be more and more of a player in our knowledge. As our knowledge increases, it's all going to be because of and centered around water.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think we're going to learn a lot more, and we're going to be excitedly surprised at what we discover with water when we start to open ourselves up to new ideas. I consider the affinity wave new spiritual technology. So I put it into that little grouping for me. It's a great tool.
Maybe you should write a book. You have a great way with words and framing things.
Someday, hey, you're the third person to tell me that in the last probably 6 weeks.
Mm.
Mm. Setting intentions.
That played out big in my life. I believe when you don't have the conscious knowledge of something that is so intricate and powerful that it plays out in an unconscious way. And in the course of my life, apparently I was lying the attention to become a healer. And I didn't realize what I was doing when I did it. And sure enough, I ended up being a healer in this life. And as I put the desire out there or the intention out there, then I was blessed with people and experiences that moved me along my path and got me to the place where I do the healing that I do today.
That's
And, and, and,
beautiful.
and now that I know the power of intentions and I could be more conscious about it, it's definitely another one of those tools that you can utilize to create the life experience that you choose to have.
So I think the other part of intention that we don't really talk a lot about, or we don't talk about in the same sentence perhaps, is we do the attentions, but it's what we set our attention to. And you have a one-liner in the book that I just busted out laughing when you said, "Who knew the universe was so concrete?" So what we set our attention on, the universe who adores and loves us, is more than happy to give us.
Absolutely.
Most of us set our attention on the things that we worry about. And
Unfortunately.
that's what we get a lot of because the universe is pretty doggone concrete.
Yeah.
They take us at our word for it. So, a little bit on that because I think that that's pretty powerful and important. We can make all the storyboards, intentions, picture boards we want, but what we set our attention to is really what we're getting
And that's a good
in,
distinction to
in a
make.
very concrete way.
Yes. Because I know lots of people have been frustrated in the past with those storyboards. But you can't do one thing in 1 minute and then spend the next 10 minutes in another place. What's more powerful, the 1 minute where you're all happy, fancy free, or the other 10 minutes that you're really emotion? That's the other thing, emotions. Emotions are powerful. If you put that emotion behind it, then that power just goes exponential, that creative power, and that you will create it. Well, unfortunately, thus far, we are much more emotionally triggered by all those negative things that we have to deal with. And we get very emotional about that. We get fearful, we get angry. You know, I think anger is one of the most powerful emotions next to love. And when we're throwing that out, it's no wonder that we attract just the opposite of what we intended over here with our storyboard. So be careful where your attention goes. You
And
know, you can't be in two places at once.
right, and the emotions are the magnet that draw it.
Oh my gosh, yes. That
The
was a tough
emotions are
lesson to learn.
definitely the magnet that draw it in. And I was just going to say something really profound, and I forgot what it was. Yeah, they're the magnet that will
Yeah.
definitely pull it in. So you know what else is really interesting, Mark? Is I don't know if you know this or not, but fear and excitement are the exact vibration. They are literally the same frequency and vibration. So when a situation arises, you can choose either fear or excitement, both the same vibration. You need to
But they
pay
have different
attention,
outcomes.
but they have different outcomes. So it's a choice that we make
Oh,
by our attention and our emotions. So I think it's important to know that fear and excitement are both the same vibration, although they're polar opposites, I think.
you used the word victim and victim consciousness earlier. And I think that has been so prevalent in our society because, as a whole, we have been going through life unconsciously,
Hmm.
and reacting in an emotional way about negative things that just keep attracting those negative things to us. Well, I think part of the healing process is becoming more conscious. As we go move out of that darkness, we're not on automatic anymore. Now we're becoming thoughtful. We're thinking about things. We can see cause and effect more readily than what we had in the past. We don't feel like we're out of control anymore because with these tools that we're evolving into, we're becoming more conscious and we can put our attentions very consciously, very concretely on the things and places that you want to manifest in your life. And that's just a higher vibrational ability.
And the light lets us see through that darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree that that's a beautiful thing. The other thing, was we're touching on victim consciousness. A lot of that is not, a lot of victim consciousness is actually someone else's thoughts or belief systems that we took on ourselves and own. So we really have to pay attention about where does the victim consciousness come from? Is it even ours to own? And I'll even go so far as to say as a lot of it doesn't come from just this lifetime, but it's
Yeah.
generationally passed on.
Yeah.
So, this is such an exciting time because we have the ability to put an end to all of that forevermore.
At one point, I was thinking as I was writing the book that my hope with my words was I was going to help people unlearn everything that they've brought on thus far in their lives. When we're young, we learn through observation. If you want to teach something, model the behavior, and people will emulate you. Our religions, if you were unfortunate enough to be brought up in a religion, all the brainwashing that happens at a very early age when the mind is just making all those neural synapses connections, creating beliefs. The families that we incarnate to, the dynamic, is there loving and supportive, or is it hateful and punishing? The societies we grow up in, the economic levels that we grow up in are all brainwashing us at a very early age that we not even realize what's happening. So by the time we're adults, we're just reacting to all this stuff and we don't know why we're reacting to it. Well, as we're awakening and we're becoming more thoughtful, and you learn about what's really going on or what the possibilities really are, it's providing a wonderful opportunity to rethink everything that we thought we knew and we program ourselves to what we really are and what we want to create.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. For the listeners out there who are interested in working with you, what would that look like for them and how would they get a hold of you?
Well, I work on an energetic level, working with vibration and frequency. I'm looking for low energy stuff that needs to be released and eliminated, and replace that with higher vibrational health, healing, and manifesting good things in your life. You can contact me through my email. It's endeavor2, the number two, evolve at gmail.com. Just send me an email and I'll connect with you and we'll go through the particulars of how to set up an appointment.
Awesome. Do you do coaching also?
It just comes with the territory. You
Okay.
know, I see myself as a channel. What needs to be said usually just flows right through me. So sometimes I'm surprised what comes out because I'm not putting a lot of conscious thought into it. I've just learned to be blank and just let it flow. If it pops into my head, I know I need to communicate it.
Okay, that sounds like an awesome experience. I do know that I have been gifted to use some of your energetic work and healing and had very positive results. Something as simple as a rash on the back of my neck that suddenly appeared and was making me nuts. You pulled out the dowser, we went through some charts. 2 days later, it was gone, and I was very fascinated at the root cause with it, but never had a problem with it after that. So, that would be my testimony to some of what I've experienced with you. Wow, I'm just going to go with wow. This has been such an impactful episode. Any last thoughts that you would like to leave with us?
You know, our interactions are always amazing. I'm just so charged right now with everything that we've discussed and covered. Most of it was just totally random. I had no idea that we were going to go down the roads we did. That's the beauty of you and I, is that we just kind of free associate with one another and we end up into the most marvelous places. So thank you so much for the opportunity to interact yet again.
And I want to thank you for your openness, your being vulnerable, your sharing. And I agree, we do seem to flow and sync and work well off of each other. And the gift in it is if just one listener, if it has meaning to them and it influences their life in a positive way, you know, uh, it's a good day, right?
Yeah,
It
that's how I
really is
felt
a good
about
day.
writing the book. If the book just positively helped one person, then it was worth writing.
So, Mark, if someone wants to get a hold of your book, Escaping Madness: A Journey to Awakening, how would they do that?
Well, you can get it anywhere online at any major book retailer. The most obvious is Amazon. And if you wanted a personally autographed copy, just send me an email and I'll dialogue with you a little bit and I'll make what I write in the book specific to you.
Oh, wow, that's really special. That's pretty cool. Thank you.
I have fun doing that.
Nice. Nice. That's very special. And the book is Escaping Madness: A Journey to Awakening. Mark
Yes.
Robinson is the author. I want to thank you again for joining us. This has been an awesome conversation. And for all the listeners out there, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. Remember, embrace that wild soul. Until next time. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Wild Soul Gatherings Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. To learn more about our guests, please go to our website, wildsoulsgathering.com. We're very eager to hear from our listeners what you thought of the episode, topics you might like us to cover in the future, your thoughts on spirituality, questions you may have. Please feel free to send us an email at wildsoulsgathering@gmail.com. This is your host, Dr. Sandra Marie, sending each of you peace and love. Until we meet again, embrace your wild soul.